It's nice to be able to flick the hair again. So I had COVID-19, and it was weird. And I'm going to tell you everything I learned from having the coronavirus. And the first thing is to make a whole bunch of YouTube videos to monetize the hell out of it. That's it? One video was $1.59? Are you serious? What a waste. So I caught COVID-19 in December of 2020 and decided to document my experience here in Korea. The reason was I literally knew no one who had contracted COVID-19, and I thought, hey, this is something I would want to know about. So maybe other people would want to learn about it too. I mean, why not? What happens when you catch COVID-19 in Korea? Where do you go? What do you do? What do you eat? And I learned a lot. Some things are universal, like what it's like to lose my sense of smell. Others are unique to Korea, like the amazing treatment I received here. Anyway, here it is, my personal list of things I learned from catching the coronavirus. That sounds way too positive for this video, but here we go. First, this disease can be bad, and it's also really random. I had a really bad case of the sweats. Like, I've been sick with the flu before, and I've had a fever, but I've never had to sweat it out for 3 nights in a row. And I know people who had it way worse than I did. Which brings me to my other point, is it's kind of random. I ended up giving COVID to one other person, and that person had completely different symptoms than I had. No fever, but body aches and headaches. Still sounds pretty bad. It's the same strand of the disease, but different effects on different people. One friend in America said his grandpa, who is probably in his 80s by now, caught it and had no symptoms. And when I asked my cousins back in the United States who caught the disease what symptoms they had, well, again, they were completely different. Except for one thing, loss of smell and or taste. That's the next thing I learned about this virus. And this is purely an opinion, so don't take it the wrong way, but temporarily losing your sense of taste and smell isn't really a big deal. I mean, sure, if you lose it for months, that might be worse, but I only lost it for a couple of days, really. I mean, I'm still not fully smelling things, but it's been coming back slowly over the last week or two. Not 100%, but I'm getting there. And honestly, losing your sense of smell is pretty much just not being able to smell. I mean, you've had a stuffy nose before, or maybe you've been outside in the snow and you don't really smell anything because it's so cold. Breathe in that cold air and you smell nothing, right? That's basically what it smells like. You can't smell food, but you can still taste the texture of it, and you can taste spice. So it's not a total loss, and it wasn't as big a deal as I thought it would be. Next is a bit more serious. I learned what it's like to really fear death. It's really been a while since I've faced my own mortality. I mean, have I ever? I don't know. Even though the odds of me dying were pretty low. But again, the odds of me catching it were pretty low, so I was thinking, hey, I've already been unlucky, and I seem to be one of the few young people that actually has symptoms. Maybe this could get worse. Maybe this is it for me. And yeah, it does sound like a bit of an overreaction, but we really don't often think about our own mortality. I mean, think about it. The odds of dying from the flu or a car crash are really low, but you somehow think the odds are in your favor to win the lottery when you buy that Mega Millions or whatever lottery ticket. You know, we don't think about death, even though it is kind of all around us. Hate to break it to you, but you definitely have a higher chance of dying in a car crash than you have in winning that lottery. I'm not sad that I had to think about death. It reminded me of what was important. Specifically, in life, what's important, I started thinking about what really mattered to me, and you know what didn't matter to me at all? Money. Let me clarify. So the next thing I learned is that as long as you have the financial resources to get by, money doesn't really matter. You could live in Korea and have really inexpensive medical care. My entire COVID treatment was free. Or you could live in America and pay way too much. But as long as you have your expenses covered, money doesn't matter much after that. I mean, once I started thinking about death, I really didn't care about 3 weeks of unpaid work that I was going to miss. I mean, I'm a freelancer, so yeah, that kind of sucked. But I didn't really care about it, you know? And it made me realize that I've not been taking enough trips, vacations, time off work. And maybe, once we can, I'd like to go home a little more often. Back to America, Ohio, once this pandemic ends. Next thing I learned, kind of overly sentimental, but my friends are pretty awesome. They all wanted to help in any way they could. I mean, truthfully, there was really nothing they could physically do. I mean, I was kind of the disease vector here. They couldn't really send much to me, except my one friend who did drop off a thermometer at my door. But honestly, just the messages and hearing from people I was close to, and people I wasn't close to, people I'd stopped meeting and talking to because of the pandemic. Hearing from them was great, and it really does lift your spirits. I also learned that Korea is pretty awesome too, especially with their healthcare system. I mean, I always knew it was great, but this was the first time I got to actually really experience their healthcare system at work. So I got COVID-19, and I knew that because I went and got a free test at my district health clinic. Then they took me in a free ambulance ride to the treatment center. After I left my house, they actually disinfected my entire house. They sprayed it down. And then I got to the treatment center. They set me up with my own room. That was pretty nice. Personal medical equipment to, check my vitals. 3 meals a day, daily necessities, and even got myself a little x-ray while I was there. And that cost me a total of $0. It felt good to know that I'm living in a country where the government actually cares about the health of the people who live there. Oh, and one small thing I learned while being in a room by myself: prison must suck. Don't go to jail. That sounds terrible. Another thing I learned, though, is Korea isn't perfect. Korea still caved to economic pressures and refused to go to level 3 of their social distancing scheme, even though we reached the requirements that the government set of a daily average of 800 to 1,000 a day. And actually, we were above 1,000 a day on average at one point. Some people say, hey, the numbers eventually went down, it worked, but it took more than a month. And that means that gyms and cafes and a lot of other small businesses were pretty much shut down. If we would have just done it a little earlier, and I'm angry too, if they moved to level 3 much earlier when they should have, I probably wouldn't have caught COVID. So it's a personal gripe as well. But honestly, overall, besides that, I love what Korea has done during this pandemic. I learned that frontline workers are awesome. I mean, we already knew that, but it's different when you see them right in front of you when you have COVID. And I just think wow, honestly, you voluntarily work at a job where you surround yourselves with sick patients like me who can give you COVID-19. I mean, that is, for lack of a better word, it's inspiring. Frontline workers, you are really the best. For real. But you don't love everyone. Oh, Alex, you shouldn't have hate in your life. There's no room for it. Love everyone. I'm sorry, you're right. I should learn to love my neighbors who have put the lives of me, my grandmother, my cousins, and everyone else in America whom I love at risk. Should love every one of them. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to warn you when sarcastic Alex is back. Screw those guys. There are people who have done things out of either intentional ignorance or willful disobedience because they're so over this, right? Totally. Now I should clarify. If you went out and you got coffee or dinner with a friend, I'm not talking about you. I'm not mad at you if you hung out with 5 people at Christmas instead of 4. It's fine. But, it's the selfish churchgoers, the partiers, or MAGA-ers, whatever you call them, who really went out of their way to be terrible people and help spread the disease. But if you don't want me to use the word hate, dislike with a passion and would prefer not to exist nearby them. How's that? The last thing I really internalized, life is random. It's not about being fair or unfair. It's about being lucky or being unlucky. I was really safe in a country that was really safe. I still got it. I follow people on social media back in America who are out all the freaking time, and they still haven't gotten it yet. But it's just luck. That's all it is. Of course, with a little help of Darwinism to help your odds. You being stupid changes your odds, but that's all they are. Odds. Even the dumbest non-masker this COVID season could still avoid getting COVID based on luck. It's random who gets it, and it's random how it affects them. Life is random. Appreciate it more. Those are just some of the things I've learned from having COVID-19. Obviously, there's a lot more out there, and everyone's experiences were different. Some people were luckier than me, and some were not. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles. That's a really cheesy way to end it. But hey, name that movie. I'll give you a hint. Jim Carrey. Hope you're doing well. Stay safe, stay healthy, and wear a mask. Socially distance. And hey, have a nice day wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye Haseyo. I should have ended with good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Another Jim Carrey movie.